When you think of Honda, what comes to mind? For most of us, it's this: world-class motorcycles produced in pristine factories with a long history of not just racing, but winning. It's also very likely for the majority of people in the world the name Honda doesn't really resonate outside of their daily commute, or perhaps a passionate pursuit of pinnacle heights in two- and four-wheel motorsports. For a fortunate few, the name Honda even conjures the definition of practical luxury, the thinking man's corporate aircraft, or personal supercar. Today we take a break from riding and wrenching to discuss one of the pioneers of modern motorcycles and rediscover the history of how Honda motorcycles made their way into our garages and on our streets. Today's video is sponsored by Bikers Run, the new online store for bespoke motorcycle tools, parts, and accessories. More unique parts and accessories are being added daily, so check it out and check back often at bikersrun.com. The story of Honda motorcycles starts at the end of World War II, and as it does for most motorcycle manufacturing companies founded in the mid to late 20th century.
We are gathered here, representatives of the major warring powers, to conclude a solemn agreement whereby peace may be restored.
Prior to war, Soichiro Honda owned and operated a manufacturing company with his partner Soichiro Kato. The two set up the Tokai Seiki Heavy Industry Manufacturing Company, making piston rings for internal combustion engines. Their biggest customer? The Toyota Motor Company. During the war, Tokai Seiki was placed under the control of the Japanese Ministry of Munitions. In 1942, Toyota took over 40% of the company's equity, and Soichiro Honda was downgraded from president to senior managing director. Through 1942 to 1944, the male factory employees gradually disappeared as they were called up for Japanese military service, and both women and students began to work in the factory as members of the Japanese War Effort Volunteer Corps. During this wartime, Soichiro Honda would calibrate the factory production tools and machines himself, and it was during this time that he devised ways of automating the production of his factory's piston rings. During this time of innovation, and at the request of Keiichi Kawakami, president of Nippon Gaki, which later became Yamaha, he invented an automatic milling machine for wooden aircraft propellers. Previously, it had taken a week to make a single propeller by hand. But with Honda's new milling machine, it was possible to turn out 2 aircraft propellers every 30 minutes. Allied air raids on Japan became increasingly intensified, and the city of Hamamatsu was smashed to rubble. With it, Honda's Tokai Seiki factory. The company suffered a further disaster on January 13, 1945, when the Nankai earthquake struck Honda's second production facility, the Iwata plant. Soichiro Honda sold what was left of his factories to Toyota for 450,000 yen. In August 1945, the price worked out to roughly $120,000 US. In today's money, this would be just under $2 million. It turned out to be a great deal for Toyota as well, as inflation following the Second World War drove down the yen by as much as 10 times from its prior value. Out of the chaos of World War II, Soichiro Honda took the money from the sale of his bombed out and broken factories to create the Honda Technical Research Institute in Hamamatsu, Japan. Founded in less than a year since the war's end in October 1946, starting with very little, Honda was inspired by military surplus 50cc combustion engines made by Tohatsu that supplied electrical power to Japanese wireless radios. Transportation was a major obstacle in post-war Japan. Japanese manufacturing infrastructure had been destroyed by 1946, and the average Japanese citizen didn't have access to surviving pre-war cars, even if they could find the severely rationed gasoline to run them on, or a road level enough to operate them on. What Japan did have were bicycles, and this was quickly becoming the primary mode of transportation besides walking. Soichiro Honda saw an opportunity to build a machine that would assist the average Japanese person to travel distance through bombed-out streets. This single-cylinder 2-stroke engine became the base for Honda's first powered bicycle, the Honda A-Type. The A-Type prototype, pictured here, was made using those same Tohatsu generator engines, but Honda only had about 500 surplus engines available to produce his early powered bicycles. By using the knowledge Honda gained in manufacturing piston rings, he die-cast his own engine components, which was a departure from the Tohatsu, which used parts cast in sand molds. Now, die-casting was significantly more expensive as a manufacturing process, and paying for Honda's desire to build a better motor nearly stopped him before the motorcycle company got started. Honda's engine was installed into later production A-types from 1947 onward. Called the Bata because of the noise the two-stroke engine made, the A-Type was a significant first effort. But in Japan, the A-Type had a relatively short life, and truer motorcycles soon followed, like the 98cc D-Type 3, better known as the Honda Dream. But this bike still used a two-stroke engine, which was noisy, prone to seizing, and didn't smell great because of the gas-oil mixture. Soon after the first Honda Dream, the 200cc Dream 3E propelled the company technology from two-stroke to four-stroke engines with a uniquely designed overhead valve configuration, something that was uncommon in any engine in 1951. To test the Dream E prototype, it was ridden up Mount Hakone, a trip in which most vehicles had to stop at least part way through to allow the engine and brakes to cool down. The 150cc Dream E prototype, despite typhoon rains and winds, made it up the full road without stopping at an average speed of 45 miles per hour. If you were to quantify a turning point for Honda motorcycle during these early years of manufacturing, it would have to be the development of and the distribution for the F-Type Cub with its signature red engine and moon-shaped white fuel tank located under the rider's seat. The F-Type Cub prompted then CEO Takeo Fujisawa to initiate a new distribution plan. At the time, Honda motorcycles were sold in less than 10% of all of the 200 to 225 motorcycles retailers in Japan. The name Honda was not well known, and Fujisawa did something radical. He appealed directly to the 50,000 plus bicycle retailers in the country, citing that their customers wanted bicycles with engines now, and the F-Type Cub would ensure the bicycle shop's future. Over 13,000 bicycle retailers signed up to sell the F-Type Cub, and the Honda brand received a much-needed boost in recognition and popularity. Also at the direction of Fujisawa, Honda employed district sales managers to bring Honda products directly to the retailers and train their staff, which was another first for 1951 Japan. The F-Type Cub was delivered to these bicycle shops in a box in 1952, consisting of an engine, fuel tank, and running linkage. The kit could be installed on almost any bicycle, and this strategy provided Honda with a huge advantage over its competition to distribute the F-Type Cub kit, with deliveries of 6,000 to 9,000 units per month being shipped out to stores and waiting customers. The next machine that changed Honda's fortune went on sale in 1958. It was the 49cc four-stroke semi-automatic Super Cub. This machine was a zig for the Japanese motorcycle culture when everyone else was zagging to larger and larger displacement bikes. Japan, in similarity to America, was experiencing a youth motorcycle subculture movement, or a motorcycle gang mentality called the Kominari Zuku. This movement in Japan motorcycling is believed to have started the better-known Bozozuku motorcycle clubs. But unlike North America, in the late 1950s, Japan entered an economic depression, and although the Super Cub didn't do well in its initial years in Japan, it opened Honda to world markets in Europe and the United States. Honda opened its first American office in Los Angeles, California in 1959. Honda's first year in the US was also disappointing, with only 175 machines being sold. In the late 1950s and early 60s, Honda manufacturing was plagued by quality issues, with complete shipments of motorcycles being refused at the port of Los Angeles and returned to Honda Japan. At home, Honda was employing road fleet motorcycle technicians to go to customer homes and repair failing clutches and overheating engines in their bikes and scooters. The saving grace during this period in Honda's line of machines was the Super Cub. It sold in 1959 for $250 US. And by 1961, Honda America was selling over 1,000 Super Cub scooters a month. The Super Cub, now known as the Honda 50 in North America, also was the focal point for an advertising campaign that didn't just change Honda's fortune, but impacted the public perception of every motorcycle that has come after it.
There are many ways of covering ground. You can be conventional and use four wheels. There's nothing wrong with this. You'll have lots of company. Or you can relive palmier days, like this. Only a good horse is hard to find. On the other hand, you may prefer the simplicity of two wheels. Of course, you put more in than you get out. But by replacing muscle power with horsepower, you can ride a Honda, conserve your energy, and enjoy the fun, freedom, and economy of two wheels. A Honda is easy to ride. Even your brother-in-law can master it in minutes. And as for economy, a Honda never gulps gas, just sips it 200 miles to the gallon. And a Honda costs less to own than a good set of golf clubs. It can hold 45 miles an hour all day without complaining. The engine practically takes care of itself. That's an automatic clutch and 3-speed shift he's using. Foolproof and simple. And as for safety, with Honda's cam-type brakes on both wheels, you stop on a dime. You'll have a lot of fun riding a Honda. Of course, if you must have four wheels, how about another Honda?
The slogan, "You meet the nicest people on a Honda," was a game changer for motorcycling in general, and even today is regarded as the most well-known and famous motorcycle ad campaign ever created. This departure from the motorcycle culture of the day propelled the Honda 50 to be the highest volume motorcycle ever produced and sold in the world. Without these words,
"You meet the nicest people on a Honda. You meet the nicest people on a Honda."
You must admit, you meet the nicest people on a Honda. World's biggest seller.
it's doubtful Honda would have ever found a solid foundation in North America in the 1960s, or perhaps ever. Honda was the Japanese trailblazer for motorcycles, and in the spirit of Lewis and Clark, it mapped out the United States for the other motorcycle manufacturers of Japan. In America, Honda became the world leader in motorcycling we know today. Besides the Honda 50 Super Cub, there are two more game-changing moments, not just for Honda, but for motorcycling as a whole. The first was in 1969, with the introduction of the Honda CB750 four-cylinder. The CB750 shocked everyone with the introduction of an overhead cam, inline four-cylinder engine mounted horizontally in the frame. 4 cylinders, 4 carburetors, chrome 4x4 exhaust headers. This was not your dad's Super Cub or CT90. This bike looked like it meant to dominate the competition, and when it came out, it took more than a few years for everyone else to catch up. Producing 67 horsepower at 8,000 RPM, the CB750 was 15% more powerful than the next closest competitor, the BSA Rocket 3 and Triumph Trident T150. The introduction of the CB750 also marked the transition of Honda away from the previous reliability and quality control issues it had been struggling with. The CB750 was powerful, yet smooth and reliable, but it also came with the latest technology, like hydraulic front disc brakes, an electric starter, and a 5-speed gearbox, all at a price lower than its comparable bikes of the day. In 1969, the CB750 sold for around $1,495 US, and would have been a great investment since early models like this one now sell for well over $200,000 today. With a claimed top speed of 130 miles per hour, this bike effectively ruined the US and British-made motorcycle industry for decades after. BSA left the motorcycle business in 1972, Triumph Engineering went bankrupt in 1983, and although they were bought out of bankruptcy the same year, didn't sell another motorcycle under the Triumph name until 1991. The parent company of Harley-Davidson was deeply concerned by the power and reliability of the Honda. In fact, it went looking for someone else to own Harley-Davidson. But when American Machine and Foundry tried to sell off Harley-Davidson in the 1970s, it couldn't find a buyer because of the company's poor sales and market share. AMF eventually took a buyback offer from the grandson of one of the company's founders, Willie G. Davidson, and some notable friends and employees of Harley Davidson at the time. But that's another story. The CB750 also paved the way again for other Japanese manufacturers to come to the American market with their own versions, like the 903cc Kawasaki Z1 and the Suzuki GT750, which was the first bike to offer a liquid-cooled engine in this size in 1971, despite it being a two-stroke motor. With European motorcycle manufacturers in turmoil, Harley-Davidson and the rest of the Japanese motorcycle industry scrambling to catch up, Honda dominated much of the street bike market through the 1970s, and this allowed Honda to diversify into other segments of recreational vehicle production and racing. The final Honda motorcycle I want to talk about today was yet another game changer for the industry as a whole. In 1975, Honda launched its first automobile-inspired motorcycle, the GL1000, or more commonly known as the Goldwing. The GL1000 was the first motorcycle to offer a liquid-cooled overhead cam, flat four-cylinder engine with shaft drive in one combined package. The Goldwing was launched as a direct competitor to touring machines of the day, including the Harley-Davidson Electroglide. Later models were available with full Vetter fairings and pannier packages. If you did buy a base model for a paltry $2,895, you could always outfit it with fairings when more funds became available, since the bike virtually created the aftermarket fairing and pannier business. Producing 80 horsepower, this bike ran the quarter mile in 13 seconds in 1975. Speed, however, was not the focus of engineering for the bike, which featured a fuel tank located under the driver's seat to lower the heavy bike's center of gravity, and a gear-driven alternator that rotated in the opposite direction of the crankshaft to reduce the impact of the torque steer effect the engine produced when accelerating. The Goldwing offered a smooth ride, and this is something I can personally attest to, since I owned this 1978 version of a GL1000 back in the 1990s, and I can tell you it still holds its own next to brand new machines decades after it was made. The Goldwing quickly inspired motorcycle engineers and designers, as it was seen as the technology leader of its day. Honda sold over 100,000 Goldwings in the first 5 years of production, and stayed strong despite President Ronald Reagan imposing a 45% tariff on motorcycles imported into the United States with a displacement greater than 700 cc's.
And that was what we did 4 years ago. You asked us to give you breathing room so you could finish getting into shape to meet unexpectedly strong foreign competition.
Now, it's said that fortune favors the bold, and Soichiro Honda was always thinking boldly, never more so than when he opened the first Japanese motorcycle manufacturing plant in the United States in 1979. The Marysville motorcycle plant, located northwest of Marysville, Ohio, built not just Honda Goldwings as a result of Reagan's tariff, but other well-known machines like the CR250 Elsinore, Honda Shadow 1100, the Valkyrie, and Honda Foreman ATV. The 1 millionth machine produced at Marysville was a Goldwing that rolled off the assembly line in July 1996. Now, unfortunately, motorcycles and ATVs are no longer made in Marysville. The plant is now a part staging warehouse for Honda automobile manufacturing, which is also in the city. The Goldwing, like the Honda CB750 and Honda 50 Super Cub before it, gave the world a motorcycle it never knew it wanted. In each case, Honda went where the competition wasn't, and didn't just fill a niche, it created powerful segments that influenced where the world went and what it accomplished going forward on a motorcycle. Now, there were a lot of motorcycles I could have mentioned, but in my opinion, these were the ones that drove, or rather rode, Honda motorcycles to where it is today. If you have a favorite Honda of your own, be sure to drop it in the comment section. And if you like this brief look at the story of Honda motorcycles, be sure to give it a thumbs up. I really do appreciate your views and feedback, so please keep it up and thank you. And until next time, be sure to ride safe.